How do you do? I'm Dustaroo, and I want to talk to you once again about Dead by Daylight's new 2v8 game mode. But instead of channeling my inner Eeyore,
and no hope of things getting better,
I want to be a little more positive and talk about all the things we can hopefully see next time a 2v8 comes around. From new maps, new mechanics, more killers, and more things to do. This is everything 2v8 needs for next time. So let's start off with the killers. As of now, 2v8 only allows us to use 5 of some of Dead by Daylight's earliest killers: Trapper, Wraith, Hillbilly, Nurse, and Huntress. This is a great start with a pretty simple set of killers to test the waters of what works and what doesn't. The real meat of this mode are the killers, so the next time 2v8 comes around, I want them to go big. I'm not expecting them to add all or even licensed killers, as there may be some legal stuff that we're not aware of, so I'm going to put them in 2 different categories when talking about them. When it comes to new killers being added, I'm going to list the ones that would benefit the most from the 2v8 mode specifically over other killers. First, we have the Hag, and I personally despise the Hag as we have a lot of bad blood and beef that goes back many years. But even I, as a mega Hag hater, can see how great of an addition the Hag would make to 2v8. I think generally in the main mode, trap killers are not very thrilling to go against, but in 2v8 they take on a new role as a support character, and the Hag would just feel so much better to go against than the Trapper in my opinion. Not instantly being injured, and not stuck in a trap for a free down. Of course she would need some tweaking to still be able to keep up with a power such as hers. I think she would excel in 2v8 like she can't in regular Dead by Daylight. Clown is another such case where I believe he would do so much better as a 2v8 killer than he does in the regular game, acting as another support character who could do things like apply different effects to not only survivors but his fellow killers too, like tossing a speed or exposed bottle at them to apply a buff to an ally. The 1v1 against Clown would also feel a lot better with the influx of pallets all over the map. That will make his slows not feel so bad to go against. The Clown has a lot of room to be one of the most diverse and interesting additions to the 2v8 game mode. Blight. Blight has to be the most obvious pick for 2v8. You don't need to change much of his power to make it 2v8 ready. He's fun to play, and for the most part go against when his brutal add-ons are no longer in play. He would open up some interesting team play and of course some delicious clips for viewer consumption. The Artist. The Artist has a pretty perfect power for 2v8 that no other killer really does. Just having the ability to tag survivors with birds near another killer, maybe making it so swarmed survivors are permanently seen to both killers. This would open up the avenue of the Artist being a very good solo queue killer, not only being able to down survivors herself, being a pretty lethal threat on her own, but also giving any clueless killer a little indicator to assist in a down, or at the very least, hey, there's a survivor over there, go do something about it. And finally, Legion. Legion is a killer that lends to 2v8 very well, but will need a bit of adjustments to feel good for both sides. I do have an idea of how I think that could work. We could have Legion be less of a mass damage machine. Instead of giving the Legion massive amounts of speed, they could instead only be slightly faster, still able to beat survivors on loops, but not able to chain hit the entire lobby. Their new ability could be revealing the auras of all survivors within their radius to both killers, making them a very good area sweep kind of killer. And a hot take of mine, the Legion should be the only killer that is allowed to have 2 in the same lobby, so the Legions can actually work together as a team as it feels they were supposed to. And I said I would mention it, but here's 3 licensed killers I would want to see, even though I'm unsure if we would be able to get licensed killers in this mode because of some legal loophole that can be overly specific and annoying. Bubba. I want Bubba in 2v8 for one reason. I want to see the clip that will somehow happen of Bubba downing all 8 survivors in one single chainsaw sweep. It would be devastation thought impossible before this game mode. Plus he can't really camp, so that big pain point against him is pretty much gone. The Xenomorph. The alien would be a fun addition to this mode simply because of how much mayhem turrets would cause all over the map. It could actually be a lot of fun for survivors, with a ton more turrets allowed on the map at any time that could reveal the auras of both killers that happen to walk by them. Imagine being a Billy and a flame turret just shoots you while you're chainsaw sprinting, revealing your aura. It won't do anything but annoy you, but would add a whole new layer to some survivor matches. Nemesis. Come on, you're telling me you don't want to see how funny it would be having zombies running around the match of 2v8? Now instead of getting double team, you could get quad pounded. If you did add Nemesis to the match, I think you would have to scrap the vaccines and maybe remove the ability to destroy pallets with the whip. I feel like you would have to adjust Nemesis somehow. There's a lot of ways you can do it, but regardless, I think Nemesis would be a great addition to the 2v8 pool. But nothing excites me more about Nemesis than the idea of him punching Naughty Bear square in the face. Like, come on, that's just some good comedy right there. So let's talk about some maps I hope we see. Just like killers add variety for everyone, maps do the exact same thing. We need a bunch more maps to make matches in 2v8 feel a little bit more interesting and less samey. Since I am mentioning variety, let's just say my most likely controversial hope for a new map. I want to see a mega-sized version of Larry's Memorial Institute. I want at least one singular indoor map for 2v8. If we're talking variety, an indoor map is definitely going to do that, drastically changing how a match of 2v8 feels compared to all the other types of maps, which have some differences, but most of them are just aesthetic changes. A mega indoor map would just be a crazy change of pace, and I kinda really want to see it. And let's keep the controversial takes going. Let's see a mega Toba landing. I actually like Toba Landing. I don't love Toba Landing, but I do like it. I still get the feeling that most people have hate towards this map for whatever reason, but I think it's alright. But it would be really cool to see a giant version of it in 2v8, since it does have one of the best visual designs with all the little critters and flying bird things all around. It would be a pretty neat addition. And another cool map solely for its aesthetics would be Ormond. I love Mount Ormond for its snow. It's such a pretty looking map with a wholly unique feeling that no other map really captures. With possibly my favorite main building, the Ski Lodge. While this map may have many issues when it comes to balance in regular Dead by Daylight, I think a lot of these go away or are significantly less problematic in 2v8. Like the Ski Lodge being too big. If it did come to 2v8, I would guarantee that it would feel a whole lot smaller when 8 survivors are running around inside of it, with 2 killers cutting off multiple directions. And just for that alone, I would love to see Ormond come to 2v8. Another map that I think could excel more than it does regularly would be Dead Dog Saloon. I like this map, but I'll be the first one to tell you that the main saloon feels really rough sometimes on Killer, while the rest of the map can feel a little too condensed on Survivor. But in 2v8, that saloon would be very interesting to play around with 2 killers. Imagine them being able to plan multiple ways to cut off survivors trying to use it for safety. While the rest of the map will be expanded, it'll let the tiles and buildings breathe a little bit better. And finally, let's pick another classic map to come into the game. Let's add the Ironworks from the McMillan estate, solely because I want to see 8 survivors jumping from the top of it. Plus, the McMillan maps generally have some of the most fair and fun map layouts in the game, for both sides. And I think most players would agree with that, so it's a simple, easy pick to come to 2v8. The most obvious improvement we could see for the next 2v8 release, besides adding in another character, is more abilities to pick from with both Killer and Survivor. I'm not talking about new classes, but straight up new abilities on pre-existing characters and classes. There is a lot you can do to expand the abilities in the 2v8 mode, but I'm going to keep it brief for now until I do my full abilities idea video. In the game right now, you pick your Killer or Survivor class, and you are stuck with 4 abilities. That's it. I do think this game mode would be greatly improved by a large amount just by adding a few new options for both Survivor and Killer to pick from. Simple things like instead of the ability to reveal survivors' auras when entering chase, it could be anytime a survivor is within 16 meters of you and starts healing, their aura is revealed to both killers for a short amount of time. Exact same thing can be done for the survivor classes, like with Scout. Instead of revealing a killer's aura just by looking at them, anytime you're in chase, that killer's aura could be revealed. Just small adjustments on how the class plays that still feels in line with how that class is supposed to function and benefit the team. I feel like 4 options for both killers and survivors would be a good enough start to add a much needed bit of depth and discovery that can make Dead by Daylight so appealing to those that enjoy the game. It does not need to be super crazy, but just letting the community figure out some new ways to play will go a long way. So now that we've talked about adding new abilities, we can talk about new survivor classes that don't just give variety and pre-existing ways to play, but giving entirely new ways to experience Survivor in 2v8. New classes would be some of the most important improvements to the mode, because without survivors, we don't have 2v8. The killer experience is already pretty great, so there's not much to improve besides adding those new abilities and characters. Survivors need more classes with varying different playstyles to choose from, and I have rough drafted 4 of them that fulfill different ways to play Survivor and help your team besides just doing generators better. Let's talk about the Saboteur. The Saboteur specializes in hindering and deceiving killers in a stealthy or less upfront combative playstyle, but still fighting back against them. Some abilities the Saboteur could do in a trial could be like leaving traps behind on generators that reveal the auras of killers within 16 meters, stunning them if they happen to kick that generator, and hindering killers by 5% when they're within that 16 meter radius while a trap is active. They could also leave behind glue traps on windows and vaults that slow the killer's vault animation, reveal their aura while doing so, and hindering their speed for a short amount of time while they shake off that glue. Those are just some examples, and I will spend some time making a full video on new abilities and classes for 2v8, but these are just some early ideas for new ways to play. Another more aggressive but defensive class could be that of the Meat Shield. The Meat Shield could function as a guardian, a defender for their fellow survivors, putting their life on the line to prevent other survivors from being sacrificed. You could have abilities like within 6 meters of an injured fellow survivor, the Meat Shield has the ability to use Dead Hard, whether it's locked behind a long exhaustion timer before doing it again, or some action that would earn them tokens to do it. This would give survivors a lot of agency in playing smart and putting themselves in harm's way, but not being easily rewarded for it. Pair this alongside the ability to see the auras of injured survivors, a haste buff when in the vicinity of injured survivors, and it could make their role of protection difficult, but also well rewarded if they play it out right. Hey, maybe even toss in the ability to give a health state to an injured survivor at the cost of your own, and you could be a very supportive and aggressive class. Something needs to be done with totems, so let's add the Mystic class, whose whole playstyle revolves around totems and creating special buffs and debuffs around them. This is probably the most tricky role to make interesting but fair out of the bunch, but special boons seems like the best way to go. Set up a boon on a totem that could be considered a mega boon. Since the maps are a little bigger, let's increase the radius to something like, 32 meters. While in this radius it could do several effects, like reveal the auras of both killers and survivors within it, increase healing speed, and grant a small haste boost of 2-3%. Let the Mystic also be able to see the auras of totems within 12 meters or something like that, so they can find those totems pretty easily. There is a lot to do with the Mystic, perhaps even outside of boons, but I'll need to think more on it. I only really thought of this class because totems are just pointless in this mode. The last class I could think of off the top of my head would be that of the Engineer, name not decided yet, who specializes in items, basically a walking convenience store. The Engineer could do stuff like see the aura of chests nearby and open them faster, pulling out higher rarity items with add-ons attached. Be able to rummage through those chests to pull out a second item that they can either use instead of the first item they got, or leave a little gift for a fellow survivor. These items the Engineers can carry would allow them to do things with items that other survivors can't. Like flashlights shining on killers, blinding them would reveal the killer's aura to the whole team. Toolboxes would allow them to rebuild pallets and breakable walls. Medkits they use on themselves or others could grant a temporary and small haste effect. Keys could let them see the aura of hatches from any range, closed or not. If there was any class I could think of various different abilities for, it would be the Engineer. It would also be a very unique class that you could really only experience in 2v8, which is something we really need to get players picking Survivor over Killer in this game mode. When I talk about new mechanics, I mean many different things. I mean some quality of life stuff like Basekit Unbreakable for survivors. Not the speed increase, but the ability to pick yourself up after you've been slugged a little too long. In 2v8, slugging doesn't really need to be. There is a case for it in solo play, but in the faster paced mode of 2v8, it just seems more like a dick move than tactically savvy. If you disagree, that's fine, but I think the mode would be better off if there was less incentive to slug, but still optional if you really need it. I don't want the killers to instantly send survivors to the cages anytime they're down. Let's not strip another bit of gameplay from survivors. Sometimes going in and rescuing a downed survivor under the killer's nose is fun and intense. We want to make the survivor experience more engaging, not less. I also think 2v8 could benefit massively from a big new mechanic. We could finally find a way to add a second objective to the game. I don't mean totems and things you should do, but things you could do. Rather, a new way to progress the overall objective, and I'm not sure what that would even look like, but if there was any time to test or try second objectives for survivors, 2v8 would be it. So of course, keep in mind when I'm talking about all this stuff, you would need to adjust things to make it a little bit more fair, but basically this is just extreme DBD. Fast-paced, goofy, they should embrace that. Throw shit at the wall, see what sticks, and try and balance it the best around those new ideas and factors. But if we want to focus strictly on balance, we have the basic mode for that. 2v8 will be and should be the simple chaos it deserves to be. And with that, that'll bring us to the end of the video. So what did you think of these suggestions? What are some of your ideas on how to improve 2v8 as a game mode? And try and steer clear of balance. I'm more interested in new stuff for players specifically, at least with this video. But anyways, thank you all for watching. My name is Dusteroo, and I will see you all real soon. Bye bye.